Welcome back to episode 2 on our Royal Alloy GT150 cargo rack and driving light install. You can see we're showing them off here just a little bit once we got everything done. We did decide to go with the side-by-side, low and wide style. I have them mounted upside down based on some feedback I received from the Facebook groups, my wife, and just sitting and staring at this in the garage for way too long. In this video, we'll talk about what our game plan is for getting the lights wired up, and go about getting everything installed. You're going to get a little bit of insight into how my brain works today because I am changing my mind all the time, on and off camera, talking myself into all sorts of things. So as I go through, don't judge me for all the decisions I claim to make early on, but we do get it done, and we've got a heck of a good-looking scooter here. All right, and just like that, we've got our fog lights mocked up on the scooter. Now, lighting is a balance of form and function. I want these to look really nice. I wasn't going to put some cheap LED cubes or a light bar on, but I also want them to be functional. So going down low and a little bit farther out to the side, it's going to give me a couple of benefits. Enhanced visibility for cars coming at me. Enhance my vision so I'll be able to see better at night. And they also look pretty sharp. But trying to balance that form and function, I like about 80% function, 20% form. So we need to get these wired up. And with lighting, there's always going to be adjustments. So while these are in place, they're certainly not permanent until I can hook them up to power and I can actually ride at night and aim them a little bit better. So for now, we're pretty happy. Wiring means we're going to have to put in a power line from the battery up to our lights, and then 2 relays. One relay is going to control the fog lights themselves, and we're going to mount a switch for that one. And then the other one's going to control the halos around them, and I'll tap that probably off of our headlight power. So anytime I have a headlight, I'll have the halos. Anytime I hit the switch, I'll have my fog lights. That way I'm not burning out battery, and I'm not just blinding everybody on the road if I don't need it. Now we've got everything sort of in place. The hard part is putting electricity from the battery and from the scooter to the lights up front. Now we know we're going to have to run wires somewhere that they'll be at least a little bit visible, but that's okay. We've got a couple of things that we can do with the scooter here. We do have 2 lights, so essentially 2 circuits, on each lamp. We've got the halo on the outside, we've got the driving light on the inside. My plan for right now is to run the halos always on, so I'm going to trigger those off of the headlight. And then the driving lights, the fog lights there, I'm going to put on a switch that will mount on the back of the scooter here. Eventually I'll probably drill a hole. For now, I think I'll 3D print a little mount that I can just sticky on there with some 3M tape, and that'll let me have something I can switch on and off before I decide on a permanent solution for mounting a switch. But what I have to do is take the main cover off of our headset here so I can get access to the wires and I can see, and I need to start putting things together. So to do that, I am going to build my harness. I bought it from Harbor Freight, one of their off-road LED light bar harness sets, just because it came with the switch, the relay, the connectors, and a relatively nice looking bundle of wire that I can run. So I won't be shrink wrapping 6 feet of wiring harness as I try to tuck it up and run it underneath here. But rather than put the scooter up on the bench and try to build the harness that way, we're going to build it off the scooter, leaving us plenty of slack so that we can get it run in nice and clean. But I want to make sure that we can get this working the way I envision it should. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by removing this, opening up our battery door on the scooter, and sort of laying out our harness. So we'll get this run that way, see how it works. That'll tell us if my theoretical game plan is going to work out. We'll have to figure out approximately how far it'll take us to run our wire from there, down the tube of the scooter, following the curve here, and all the way back underneath, then up to our battery box here. So that is going to be the path of our wiring harness. And then once we've gotten up here, we're going to drop it down again and come back to our 2 lights. For now, I'm going to say that's 8 feet. Probably overkill, but overkill is underrated, right? So we'll go about that process. We'll figure out how we want to go into tapping into our wires. This is our connection for the speedometer cluster, and this is our connection here for the headlight. So I can figure out which one of these wires triggers our headlight and I can tap into that, the little vampire tap on it, and then that will trigger our first relay to light up the halos on the fog lights. Our second one, well, we'll run a wire to that switch, and for this, we're going to have to take off all the hard work we did on the rack, get our nose cone off of the scooter. So once we've got everything figured out as far as wiring goes, then we'll take things apart and we'll run our wires into it. Right now, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to lay out my harness, and we've got our harness just laid out here. Realizing now the way it's set up, I'm going to have 2 harnesses if I want to put the halos up front on a relay, because the relay itself is located very close to where the battery terminal is, not closer to where the switch is. That's just poor planning on my part, but it's not a problem. We can pick up a second harness. However, with this hooked up, we've got our power switch here. I do have this just run off of a little M12 battery from Milwaukee, and I can just click it on. So there is my driving light set up on a switch. Okay, I've now switched our wires, so our positive lead is going to our halo light. And there we go. Our halo comes on. We'll go ahead, grab a second fog light harness, and then determine what the best way to get all of this connected is going to be. With both of our lights wired up here and connected, we have a blue for our halo, black for ground, and red for positive, coming off of either fog light. Those will run along the back here, probably down this little crevice, and then we'll snake them in through our horn cast. And what that'll let us do is have harnesses just coming through the scooter. We don't have to worry about running any weird bridges between these. So that'll be a nice way to do it. The spaghetti rat's nest we have on the floor here is 2 different harnesses that I have spliced together. And I apologize, I used vampire taps. I know it's not the best course of action, but it'll do the job. And what that's allowed me to do now is I have 2 harnesses coming up. My 2 harnesses here, one has a positive and a negative, the other has just a positive. And what that does for us is it allows us to share the ground coming into the front of the scooter, and then run one hot for our halos and one hot for our fog lights. What I've done is I've 3D printed a little switch box, and I've hooked up this little temporary switch here to make sure that I can put my fog lights on a proper rocker switch, like that. That'll turn them on and off. And then I'm going to tap the power to run that switch off of something behind the scooter. I'm thinking that USB port. So when we turn the ignition on, the white wire gets hot and can then power our switch. So we need to take our wire here and make sure that that is on a switched power source. That way we can't accidentally leave the lights on the scooter. You'd think, oh, how are you going to leave the lights on the scooter when you walk away? But it happens. We've all done it with cars in the past. Now things are smart enough to shut it off. We're going to try to make ours smart like that. Catching up on our progress thus far, we've got our Prima rack mounted. We've got our headlights, or our fog lights, I should say, roughly mounted where they're supposed to be. I went through, I got all the wires in here connected. I've got everything run through this sheath here. My wire's out on this end. Plenty of extra slack. I mean, I can almost tie these directly to the battery. It'd be a bad idea, but I could do it. So we've got those roughly mounted. We'll need to figure out how they're going to sit and how they're going to clock. But of course, that comes up later. We know that the lights work. We know that our scooter runs. We got it up here on the bench. So it's time now to figure out getting the wires connected to the spaghetti of harness that I showed you on the floor before, and getting that all tidied up nice and cleanly inside our relatively small scooter here. So to get started, what I believe we're going to do is pop the side panel off here to give us access into our battery compartment and a little easier access underneath the scooter. If I need to go over and take the other side off as well, so be it. But we'll pop our side panel and our cowl guard off on this side, and then we'll start looking at how we're going to be running the wires up here to our battery box inside the scooter. I'm also going to remove our glove box from the scooter here because I do need positive switched 12 volts to power the relays. Harnesses that you can buy online tend to be really basic, and all of the power is running off of the 12-volt system. So you could turn your fog lights on at any time. Now, if you're the guys over at Matt's Off-Road Recovery or something, sure, turning on your LED light bars when you're out in the middle of nowhere trying to light up a job and not running the vehicle is probably a great idea. For our purposes on a scooter, it's just a recipe for somebody to come by and flip a switch, or me not to pay attention and I roll it into the bright garage here, and I don't realize that I left the lights on until I get inside. So we'll tap off of that to power our switch for our center lights, and then we'll leave our halos on whenever the scooter's on. So that's the plan right now. We'll jump in, pop the cowl off, pop the glove box off, and start looking at how we're going to run these wires. Okay, so let's take a quick look at what I've done. Using some sections of my blue wire here, I have run little fish through the two holes back here. So my wire up top is fished down through the horn cast, and that's where I'll run the power for the headlights. This wire here is fished down through the underbone of the scooter here and out, down here where our rear brake lines come through. So what I'm going to do is just follow this back all the way down here until I can route it up and into our battery bay here. We'll get the other wires pulled through here so that we can get everything connected and hopefully tucked away pretty nicely. I could pop this horn cast off, and maybe I should. Maybe popping that horn cast off is going to make life a heck of a lot easier. I just didn't want to have to remount the rack. But the more I stand here and I talk at you, oh YouTube viewer, about this process, the better decision is to pull this rack off, drop that horn cast forward, and work in there properly. I hate when I talk myself into more work, but I guess do it right rather than do it twice. Okay, we've got all of our wires kind of run and tucked up. So here's our rat's nest of relays and fuses for the auxiliary lighting. We can see I've got my one line coming out that'll go directly to the battery. Running up on this side of the scooter right here, I have my wires for the switches, and those run under the tunnel here. And right now, they spit out right there. On the other side, there's our wires for the lighting proper. Since those are going to be running more voltage, I did run them on the opposite side of the rest of the bike's harness. We should have plenty of room over here. As far as breathability goes from the cylinder head, I don't think we're going to be too worried about anything overheating on that front. But this is a good start for us. We've just got the relays zip tied up here. And again, this sort of jumble tucked up in there pretty good. Just trying to keep it out of the way and make it relatively easy to wire up to the battery. Next step is going to be to run the wires from there up, see where they're coming from down here. So hopefully we can see the light coming through from my flashlight. So we'll get those wires run up and then try to get our switch wires done first. And the switch wires are going to come up to back here, and we're going to tap off of the green wire on this white plug. So that's going to be our positive feed for the USB port. So once that's tapped off of, we'll be able to power our relays and our switches. So let's go ahead, put you up in the corner, and we'll do that quick. All right, with a mess of wiring going on, we do have everything working as expected. We turn on our headlights and we get our halos. We come around here, we turn on our switch. We get our fog lights. Now, there's still much to be figured out. We're gonna have to clean up everything that's going on back here. I ended up tapping off of the black wire coming off of the turn signal relay up top for a switched 12-volt power source. The USB port down here does not have enough juice to turn a relay. So I've got things still a little spaghettied going on over here. Still need to clean up our wiring here and figure out how we're going to run that back behind the horn cast. That's kind of a minor thing with everything else that we've had to figure out. Got to get the battery tucked back away. We'll return to this tomorrow. Jumping back at the Royal Alloy, getting the lights installed. Hopefully this is our last segment of video other than maybe coming back and adjusting where the lights sit. Looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. But now we have to do the cleanup portion. And I'm not just talking about the workbench and the floor of my garage that are littered with pieces of wire that I've stripped off and things that I've cut and snipped and tossed off to the side. I think that's kind of a given when you're working on automotive or motorcycle wiring, is you end up with scraps of wire and pieces of everything everywhere. So I ask, not judge me for the way that my workbench looks now. The garage has looked like this for a few nights while I undertake this project. Although, I gotta say, you know, with the Prima cowl guards, I'm not saying it's how I want to run around, but that's not a terrible look. You could definitely do some LED kind of Harley style bullet turn signals here and have a bit more of a naked look, but that's not what we're going for today. Today is get our lights finished up so I can drive at night safely. Now, as we always say, the first job's temporary, but here's what we've got with our lights wired up. I did forego doing anything on the sides of the fork because it really doesn't look too bad, and I'm probably going to change things anyway. So we'll get these connected and then tuck them back in here. Fog lights mounted. We've got them roughly aimed, so they're going a little bit down and out, as you can see here. We may need to clock them a little bit like this, just to sort of get the look right, but not half bad. The wires don't look bad. Coming up, wires wrap around. And then on this side, we've got our glove box mounted. And we've got our switch, which is going to go right up here like this. Once my box finishes printing, and it just turns on, turns off. Looking over here, wiring's not too shabby. So there we go. We just need to get that wire hooked up, and our fog lights are all wrapped up. So we're going to put the side panels back on while we wait for the 3D printer to finish making our little switch box. So let's get this button back up, and we're going to be able to call it a night. That, I want to say thanks so much for coming along and joining me as I try to prove that everybody can work on their scooter. You can maintain, you can modify, you can do whatever you would like to a scooter right in your own garage. I've got a nice little setup here, but nothing fancy, nothing you couldn't do with a trip to Home Depot and Harbor Freight. When you guys watch the videos, you like them, you share them, you subscribe, you know, it helps me see the growth, and I like to help folks. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.